All right, y'all. So Matthew 24. Let's get into this breakdown. I'm going to start with the chapter context and then get into the breakdown. So Jesus has just left the temple area after delivering a blistering criticism of the scribes and Pharisees, Matthew 23. After predicting that the temple would be destroyed, he answers the questions about the end time. He speaks of a period when he will be gone from the earth and that they will be persecuted and killed. The world will be in turmoil, but the gospel will be preached everywhere. Nobody knows exactly when Jesus' return will be completed, so his followers should be constantly be prepared. Jesus continues to teach on these themes in the next chapter. So let's get into this breakdown. So, after proclaiming God's judgment on the scribes and the Pharisees, Matthew 23 and 13, in the city of Jerusalem, Matthew 23, 37, it says 37 through 398, but I don't know if they mean 39 or 38. That's funny. Okay, so Jesus leaves the temple walking toward the Mount of Olives with his disciples. Someone in their group refers to the temple saying something about the buildings. Jesus responds with another dire statement about God's coming judgment on Israel. He says the temple will be destroyed. Every brick displaced. History indicates that this prophecy was fulfilled in AD 70. After a siege of the city and the slaughter of its people, the Romans burnt the temple, then tore it apart brick by brick to reach the precious metals that had melted into the rubble. Matthew 24, 1 through 2. After Jesus takes a seat on the Mount of Olives with the temple in view, the disciples ask him for more details. Their questions focus on the end of the age, meaning the end times. They also wonder about when Jesus will return. Christ's response fills the remaining of this chapter as well as the next, Matthew 24 and 3. Jesus begins to describe a time where he will be gone from the earth and his disciples will be on their own. He warns them that many will come claiming to be the Christ, the Messiah. They will hear the news in the gospel about violence, conflicts, and other tragedies. There will also be international conflicts and famines and natural disasters. None of these will mean the end has arrived. At most, there are just signs that the end is approaching. Because no man knows a day nor the hour. Okay, Matthew 24, 4 through 8. That era will bring great suffering to the followers of Christ. They will be prosecuted and murdered. This hate will be due to the world's rejection of Christ. Many who seemed sincere in the following Jesus will fall away under this pressure and even betray and hate their former friends. Liars will arise and lead many self-identified Christians away from the faith. Rejection of morality and law will expand. The influence of godly love will fade from the world. Those who will survive these events, however, will see the gospel preached throughout the world right as the end time comes. Matthew 24, 9 through 14. One vivid sign of the end days will fulfill a prophecy mentioned extensively by the prophet Daniel. Daniel was 8:13, 9:27, 11:31, and then 12 and 11. This abomination of desolation involves some unrefined, depraved defilement of the temple. Those who see this happening will run for their lives, not even hesitating to gather supplies. Those days will be terrible beyond imagination. Jesus describes them as a great tribulation, worse than anything else in history. In fact, those events would be so terrible as threatening to all human life. Matthew 24, 15 through 22. While many terrible things happened in AD 70, they do not rise to the level depicted in these descriptions. Most likely, all that Jesus describes in these passages is said to happen in what is, at the time of this writing, still the future. When Christ's second coming finally occurs, it won't be secret in any way, shape, or form. Those who claim they need to tell others that Christ has returned will be liars without exception. The second coming will be obvious to everyone in the world, including apparent signs in nature and around the world. An otherwise unexplained sign of the Son of Man will appear. As Jesus sends his angels to gather his chosen ones, the rest of the world will mourn. Matthew 24, 23 through 31. Jesus next says that when the people see these signs, they will know that his return is truly immediately upon the world. Just as budding leaves on a fig tree signals the imminent arrival of summer, those events will indicate the return of Christ. The generation of Jesus' own time will not only be the ones to see this, Matthew 21:43, rather those who observe the catastrophic signs will be the ones who see the end, Matthew 24:35. At the same time, the time of Jesus' coming cannot be known or predicted by any person. The sign will be obvious, but only when they happen. Prior to then, there will be absolutely no truth behind claims to know the day of Jesus' return. That's why his followers must live in a constant state of readiness. Jesus begins to deliver parables to show how Christians should live out this attitude of preparation. The servant found faithfully doing wrong, what the master instructed will be. The servant found faithfully doing what the master instructed will be blessed. The one wickedly serving himself will be subject to gruesome, miserable fate. Okay, so that breakdown part 2. So Matthew 24 contains Jesus' teachings on the end-time events, distinguishing between the impending destruction of the Jewish temple and the second coming of the Son of Man. It describes the signs preceding the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, including false prophets, wars, famines, and earthquakes, and instructs believers to remain watchful and faithful. For the second coming, it warns against deception and emphasizes the certainty of his return through its specific time is unknown. Though its specific time is unknown, urgent, constant readiness, and vigilance. So, the breakdown, the context of destruction of the temple, disciples' questions. Jesus' discourse begins with his disciples pointing out the magnificent Jerusalem temple, leading them to ask about its destruction, and the signs of the end of age. AD 70 destruction. Jesus prophesies the temple's destruction which historically occurred in AD 70 when the Roman army besieged and destroyed the city. This event is described as happening within the lifetime of those who heard Jesus' words. Signs of the end time, pre-70 AD event, deception. Jesus warns of false Christs and false prophets who will perform great wonders to deceive people. Tribulation. He foretells a period of great tribulations and immense suffering, particularly for the Jewish people. Persecution. Believers would be persecuted and hated for their faith. Flight from Jerusalem. Jesus gives specific instructions to his followers to flee the city when they see abomination of desolation mentioned in the Old Testament. The second coming of the Son of Man, or the coming of the Son of Man, the second coming, distinction from temple destruction. After the tribulation, Jesus describes the signs of his coming in the sky, which is not the same as the event in AD 70 destruction of Jerusalem. Universal nature. Angels will gather the elect from all corners of the earth. Unknown day and hour. Jesus explicitly states that no one knows the day or the hour of his return. Only the Father in heaven does. Call to watchfulness. The primary instruction is to be prepared, vigilant, and faithful while awaiting his return, rather than focusing solely on worldly events. And then the last one is symbolic language. The generation that witnesses the predicted signs will also know that the second coming is near, though this exact interpretation of generation is debated, with some linking it to the generation witnessing the AD 70 events. Ooh, that was a mouthful, but that is all I have for Matthew chapter 24, the breakdown, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.